She puts her arm around the king's guard, her face, grinning, squinting face with tears of joy. Don't touch the king's lifeguard, Kingsguard. People had gathered from early morning, standing behind barriers, holding phones, waving small flags, and talking loudly with friends and strangers. Everyone knew the king would appear for a short time. For many people, this was a rare chance to see him in real life, not on screens or in newspapers. The mood was happy, light, and full of energy. The king's guards were already in position long before the crowd arrived. They stood in perfect lines, wearing their uniforms neatly, eyes sharp, faces calm. Among them was one guard who had been trained for years to stand still no matter what happened around him. His job was simple but serious: stay alert, protect the king, and never allow emotions or distractions to interfere. He had practiced this role again and again, in training grounds, in drills, and in real events. For him, this day was not about excitement. It was about duty. As the crowd grew larger, the noise increased. People laughed, talked, and shouted the king's name. Some children sat on their parents' shoulders trying to get a better view. Cameras were ready, fingers placed carefully on buttons, waiting for the right moment. The guards did not move. They did not smile or look at the crowd. They stood like statues, strong and silent. Then the king appeared. The crowd reacted instantly. Cheers rose into the air, loud and joyful. Many people waved. Some bowed their heads and others tried to move closer, hoping for a better look. The guards became even more alert. Every movement in the crowd mattered. Every step, every hand, every face was carefully noticed, even if no one could see that happening. Among the crowd was a woman standing near the front. She was excited, smiling widely, holding her phone up high. She had not planned anything serious. To her, this was a fun moment, something to remember and maybe share later. She noticed one of the guards standing close to where she was. He looked calm, serious, and strong. In her excitement, she did not think about rules or boundaries. She only thought about the moment. As the king moved forward, the woman stepped slightly closer. The guards did not react outwardly, but they noticed the movement. Before anyone could stop her, she lifted her arm and casually placed it around the guard's shoulder. She leaned in slightly, smiling, as if posing for a picture. In her mind, it was harmless. She believed it was funny, light, and friendly. The guard did not move. His face did not change. His eyes stayed forward. Inside, however, his mind became fully alert. Training took over immediately. He did not panic and he did not react suddenly. He knew that reacting too fast could create fear in the crowd. At the same time, he understood that this moment was serious. His role was not to respond emotionally, but to stay focused on the king's safety. People nearby noticed what happened. Some gasped softly. Others laughed, thinking it was a joke. A few people raised their phones higher, realizing this was an unusual moment. The woman continued smiling, unaware that she had crossed an important line. To her, the guard was just a person standing nearby. She did not understand the meaning of his position or the responsibility he carried. The guard's training had taught him to ignore personal discomfort. He had been trained to stand still in heat, cold, noise, and chaos. He had been trained to remain calm if someone shouted at him, bumped into him, or tried to distract him. This moment was different, but the rules were the same. Stay still. Stay calm. Protect the king. Other guards noticed the situation immediately. Without making a scene, they adjusted their position slightly. Their movements were small but meaningful. They were ready to act if needed, but they did not want to alarm the crowd. Everything had to remain peaceful. The king continued walking, greeting people with a gentle wave. He did not appear to notice what was happening behind him. That was exactly how it was supposed to be. The guards existed so that he could focus on the people, not on possible risks. The woman finally pulled her arm back, still smiling, still laughing softly. She turned to her phone, checking if the moment had been captured. Around her, people whispered and laughed. Some thought it was brave, some thought it was foolish. But most people did not understand the seriousness of what had just happened. For the guard, the moment passed without a single movement. His posture remained perfect. His expression stayed neutral. To anyone watching closely, he looked unchanged. Inside, he was already reviewing the situation, noting every detail as he had been trained to do. He did not judge the woman. He did not feel anger. His focus stayed on his duty. The crowd slowly settled as the king moved on. The noise lowered slightly, and the moment became just another part of the event. But for those who truly understood security and responsibility, that small action stood out. It showed how quickly excitement can turn into risk and how important discipline is in public spaces. As the event continued, most people forgot about the moment. They focused again on the king, the ceremony, and the celebration. The guard returned to being just another silent figure in uniform, standing still, watching carefully. To the crowd, he blended back into the background. To himself, he remained exactly what he had always been, a protector trained to stay calm even when the unexpected happens. This moment, though short, would later become something more. But at that time, it was simply a reminder of how close excitement and danger Tamil ta QKJ. Part 2, Co-expand Crow without heading 1300 words my in simple English words. It should be interesting, and every part should be engaging so the audience doesn't get bored. And don't use any violated word. Avoid any violated content. The moment passed, but the work of the guard did not end there. Even though the woman had stepped back and the crowd's attention had shifted again to the king, the guard remained fully alert. His body stayed still, yet his mind was active. Years of training had taught him that danger does not always arrive loudly. Sometimes it comes quietly, hidden inside normal behavior. Because of that, he continued to watch everything around him with careful focus. From the outside, he looked calm and unchanged. His face showed no emotion, but inside his thoughts were moving fast. He remembered every detail of what had just happened. The position of the woman, the speed of her movement, the reaction of the crowd, and the distance between the king and the guards. All of this information was important. His training had taught him to observe first and react only when necessary. A rushed reaction could cause panic. Calm control was always the best choice. The guard had gone through long and difficult training before earning his place near the king. Many people imagined that being a guard was only about standing still and looking strong. In reality, it was much more than that. He had trained his body to stay steady for long hours, but more importantly, he had trained his mind. He had learned how to remain focused even when people tried to distract him, test him, or break his concentration. During training, instructors had often reminded him that the public did not always understand the rules. People acted out of excitement, curiosity, or emotion. Some smiled, some waved, some shouted. Others tried to get closer than allowed. The guard was taught never to take these actions personally. His role was not to judge, but to protect. His duty was to the king and to the safety of everyone present. As the event continued, the guard noticed how quickly attention shifted. One moment the crowd was laughing and whispering about the unexpected touch. The next moment they were cheering again, waving and calling out. Human behavior changed fast, and the guard had learned to adapt without showing it. His eyes moved slightly, scanning faces and hands. His ears picked up changes in sound. He stayed ready, even when everything appeared peaceful. The woman who had touched him stood quietly now. Her excitement had softened. She looked around and noticed how others were reacting. Slowly, she began to understand that her action might not have been as harmless as she first thought. She saw the serious expressions of the nearby guards and felt a small sense of discomfort. She did not speak, but her smile faded. The guard did not look at her. He did not need to. He had already assessed the situation. What mattered most was that the king was safe and the crowd remained calm. That goal guided every decision he made. Other guards remained aware as well. They communicated through small movements, and the situation did not end with the crowd settling down. Even though everything looked normal on the surface, the guards stayed alert. They were trained to understand that calm moments could still carry risk. The guard who had been touched remained in his position, standing straight, eyes forward, breathing steady. His body showed no sign of what had happened, but his awareness was sharper than before. Nearby guards slowly adjusted their positions. They did not rush or draw attention. Their movements were smooth and controlled, almost invisible to the crowd. This was how they worked. They protected without making people afraid. Their goal was always to keep the environment peaceful while staying ready for any sudden change. The woman stood quietly now. Her phone was still in her hand, but she was no longer smiling. She felt a strange mix of emotions. At first, she had felt proud and excited. Now she felt unsure. She noticed that no one was laughing anymore. A few people had turned their faces away. Others whispered softly. The energy around her had changed. One of the guards gently stepped closer to her, not aggressively, but with calm authority. He spoke in a low voice so others could not hear. His words were respectful and clear. He asked her to step back and remain behind the barrier. There was no anger in his tone, only firmness. She nodded quickly and followed his direction without saying a word. As she moved away, her heart beat faster. She realized that she had crossed a boundary she did not understand before. She had never thought about how serious these moments were. To her, the guard had looked strong and unbothered, almost unreal, like a figure in a picture. Now she understood that he was a real person with a serious role. The main guard remained still. He did not watch her leave. His focus stayed on the king and the path ahead. That was his duty. He had learned long ago that personal moments must never distract him. Even if someone stood very close, even if someone touched him, his responsibility did not change. The king continued greeting the crowd. He smiled, waved, and nodded politely. The event moved forward as planned. Music played softly in the background. People clapped and cheered again. To most of the crowd, the earlier moment was already becoming a memory. Behind the calm scene, however, the guards were communicating. They used small signals and brief eye contact to confirm that everything was under control. No loud instructions were needed. Each guard understood their role perfectly. This silent teamwork was the result of years of practice and trust. The guard thought briefly about his training days. He remembered standing for hours under the sun, learning to control his breathing, learning to keep his face calm even when his muscles burned. He remembered instructors reminding them that their bodies belonged to the duty while they were on service. Comfort, fear, and personal reactions had to be controlled. He also remembered lessons about the public. People were emotional, unpredictable, and curious. Most meant no harm. Some did not understand rules. That was why guards existed, not to punish but to protect and guide. As the event reached its final moments, the crowd began to relax. Some people started leaving early. Others stayed, hoping for one last look at the king. The woman blended back into the crowd, feeling smaller than before. She replayed the moment in her mind again and again. She wished she could go back and act differently. The guard stayed in place until the king was safely away from the public area. Only then did their posture change slightly. The guard who had been touched felt the tension slowly leave his body, though his face still showed no emotion. His duty for that moment was complete. When the event ended, the guards moved away quietly. There was no announcement, no applause for them. That was normal. Their work was not meant to be seen or celebrated. It was meant to succeed without attention. The woman later heard people talking about the moment. Some laughed, some joked, but others spoke seriously about respect and safety. She listened silently. She understood now that what seemed funny for one person could be risky for many others. The guard returned to his regular duties, just like any other day. He did not talk about the incident. He did not need to. For him, it was simply another reminder of why discipline mattered. One small action could change everything, and one calm response could prevent problems. The day ended quietly. The crowd went home. The king returned safely. The guard stood down, but the lesson remained clear and strong. Respect, awareness, and self-control were not just rules. They were the foundation that kept people safe, even during moments of excitement and laughter. By the next morning, the moment that had lasted only a few seconds at the event began to take on a new life. People who had been there talked about it with friends and family. Some described it as funny, others as surprising. A few said it made them uncomfortable. Phones that had captured the scene were checked again and again. Short clips were shared privately at first, then more widely. What had once been a quiet public gathering slowly turned into a topic of discussion far beyond the place where it happened. The woman saw the clip later that day. At first, she laughed nervously, the way people do when they feel unsure. Seeing herself on the screen felt strange. The smile on her face looked different now. It no longer felt playful, it looked careless. As she watched the guard standing still beside her, she noticed something she had missed before. He did not react at all. His posture was strong, his face calm, his eyes forward. He looked like someone carrying a heavy responsibility. She scrolled through comments beneath the video. Some people added laughing signs and jokes. Others wrote short messages about rules and respect. A few explained how dangerous such actions could be in high-security places. Reading those words made her chest feel tight. She realized that the moment had been more serious than she ever imagined. Meanwhile, the guard returned to his regular routine. He woke up early, followed the same schedule, and reported for duty as usual. For him, the event was already part of the past. Guards were trained not to dwell on single moments. Each day brought new responsibilities. Still, he knew that public attention could bring misunderstandings. People often saw only what happened on the surface, not the discipline behind it. At work, senior officers reviewed the event calmly. They discussed how quickly it was handled and how smoothly it ended. There was no blame, only reflection. Every event was a chance to learn and improve. They talked about public awareness and how excitement could lead people to forget boundaries. The focus remained on keeping future events safe and peaceful. Outside, the discussion continued to grow. Some people shared personal stories about visiting important places and not knowing the rules. Others spoke about how uniforms and calm faces could make guards seem unapproachable or unreal, almost like part of the scenery. A few former guards shared thoughtful messages, explaining that behind the uniform was a human being trained to protect, not to entertain. The woman read those messages quietly. She felt a growing sense of understanding. She thought about how she would feel if someone suddenly crossed her personal space without asking. She imagined standing still while hundreds of people watched, unable to move or respond freely. That thought made her feel embarrassed, not because others saw her, but because she now understood the weight of her action. She decided not to comment publicly. Instead, she shared her feelings with a close friend. She admitted that she had acted without thinking. Her friend listened and nodded, reminding her that learning from mistakes was important. That conversation helped her breathe easier. She knew she could not change what happened, but she could change how she acted in the future. The guard noticed none of this online discussion. He was not allowed to follow public reactions closely. His role required focus and distance. Still, he believed strongly in respect and awareness. He hoped that people would learn something positive from the situation, even if it came from a misunderstanding. As days passed, the clip slowly lost attention. New topics appeared, and people moved on as they always do. Yet the lesson remained for those who chose to see it. Security was not about fear or control. It was about trust, discipline, and cooperation between the public and those who protected them. At another event days later, the crowd behaved differently. People stayed behind barriers more carefully. Some even reminded each other to keep distance. Guards noticed this change quietly. It showed that awareness, once shared, could make a difference without words or punishment. The woman, now more aware, attended a different public gathering. This time she stood back, watched calmly, and respected the space around her. She felt a quiet sense of growth. The excitement was still there, but it was balanced with understanding. For the guard, life continued as usual. He stood where he was needed, calm and alert. He did not seek recognition. That was never his purpose. His success was measured by peaceful endings and safe returns. The moment that once caused laughter became something deeper for many people. It turned into a reminder that actions, even small ones, could carry meaning far beyond their intention. Respect was not about strict rules alone. It was about understanding the roles people played and honoring them. In the end, nothing dramatic followed. There were no loud consequences, no lasting anger. Instead, there was reflection. And sometimes, that was enough to create change. Time moved forward, and the moment slowly settled into memory. What once felt loud and confusing became quiet and thoughtful. Life returned to its normal rhythm for everyone involved, yet something subtle had changed inside them. Not in a dramatic way, but in a calm, lasting one. For the woman, the experience stayed with her longer than she expected. At first, she thought it would fade like any other small mistake. But every time she saw news about public events or important gatherings, she remembered that day. She remembered how quickly excitement had pushed her to act without thinking. She remembered the stillness of the guard and the sudden change in the air around her. Those memories did not bring shame anymore. Instead, they brought awareness. She began to notice details she had ignored before. At events, she watched how guards stood, how they scanned crowds, how they quietly protected people without asking for attention. She realized that safety was not something that happened by chance. It was created by people who trained themselves to stay calm when others could not. This understanding changed the way she saw public spaces. She felt more patient, more respectful, and more aware of her surroundings. She also shared her experience privately with others when the topic came up, not to defend herself and not to seek sympathy, but to explain what she had learned. She told people that excitement should never erase respect. She said that uniforms did not mean someone was distant or unreal. They meant responsibility. Her words were simple but honest, and they stayed with those who listened. For the guard, the days blended together like they always had. Duty followed duty, event followed event. He stood in crowds under open skies in silence and movement. People passed by him every day, some curious, some respectful, some unaware. He did not expect them to understand his work fully. That was never required. Still, he believed strongly in purpose. He believed that calm strength mattered. He believed that being present, even without recognition, was meaningful. When he stood in place, he knew he was part of something larger than himself. He was a quiet barrier between order and chaos, between safety and risk. He never spoke about the incident unless asked by his superiors, and even then, only in simple terms. To him, it was not a story worth repeating. It was just one of many moments that tested discipline. His pride did not come from attention, but from control, from knowing that he had done exactly what he was trained to do. At future events, he noticed small changes in the crowd. People stayed back more often. Some nodded politely. Others whispered reminders to children to keep distance. These were small things, almost invisible, but they mattered. They made his work smoother. They showed that understanding could grow quietly. The king continued his public appearances, unaware of how one small moment had sparked reflection beyond the event. He trusted his guards completely. That trust allowed him to greet people freely, to smile without fear, to focus on his role without worry. This trust was built over years through discipline and consistency, not through words. The world moved on as it always does. New stories replaced old ones. New moments took attention, but for those who had truly understood, the lesson remained clear. Respect was not about distance alone. It was about awareness. It was about knowing when to step forward and when to step back. The woman carried that lesson into her daily life. She became more thoughtful, not only at public events but everywhere. She listened more. She paused before acting. She understood that her actions, even small ones, could affect others in ways she might not immediately see. The guard carried on as he always had, steady and focused. He knew that not every lesson needed a voice. Sometimes, example was enough. His stillness had spoken louder than words ever could. In the end, there was no dramatic ending, no final announcement. There was only quiet growth, a crowd that learned to respect space, a woman who learned awareness, a guard who continued his duty with calm strength. And perhaps that was the most real outcome of all. Not punishment, not praise, but understanding. A reminder that even brief moments can teach lasting lessons when people choose to see beyond laughter and look toward meaning. The story closed not with noise, but with calm. With people walking a little more carefully, standing a little more respectfully, and understanding a little more deeply that safety, respect, and discipline work best when everyone plays their part.